This is chapter 1 and 2 of A Grain of Wheat by Clyde Robert Beulah. This is one of my favorite little stories. I love starting the year with this. It is a story about an author, and he writes about his young childhood. It takes place about 100 years ago. He's no longer living, but he tells a wonderful story about the turn of the century around the 1900s. And if you look at the first picture on the cover, you can see a picture of him when he was a child. It really doesn't look that different. The time period doesn't really look that different. He looks like a little boy. He's got a sweater and a scarf and a hat, just like we would wear today. But while we read, we're going to look for other clues that tell us that this story takes place in a different time period. We're also going to look at the way the family communicates with each other and things that they do together in their society, just like we do in ours, and we'll compare and contrast them. So when you open up, or you'll be scrolling down as you look on Google Forms, the next is you'll see the picture of him with his pet, with his dog. And he talks a lot about his dog. He loves this little dog. And his name is Carlo. We're going to talk about Carlo in a bit. The next page you'll see is a dedication page. It is dedicated to his brother and two sisters, Glenn, Louise, and Corinne, just like our Corinne. We have a Corinne too. The next page is the foreword, and this is usually just a little message that the author or maybe a friend of the author writes before the book, and it says, this is a friend, not the author. When Clyde Beulah speaks to children, he tells the truth. His manner is plain and honest. His gentle humor makes us feel good. His writing makes us feel the same way. When Clyde tells a story, he chooses the right words and the right number of words to say what he means. Nothing is wasted. With quiet elegance, he takes us far beyond the barn, pasture, and woods of his Missouri childhood. Clyde wrote this memoir of his youth because a young friend asked him to. As always, he says what is necessary and moves on. We come to know him as a sensitive, inquisitive boy. We are there with him when he discovers his destiny. A Grain of Wheat provides us with many more reasons to celebrate that Clyde Robert Beulah followed his dreams. Written by David L. Harrison. Chapter 1. The other day, a young friend asked me, "Are you going to write another book?" "I think so," I said. "I hope so." "What is it going to be about?" she asked. "I'm not sure yet," I said. "Do you have an idea for me?" "Yes," she said. "Write a book about yourself." "Like an autobiography?" I asked. "Yes, like an autobiography," she said. "I don't know," I said. "I've lived a long time. If I told about all my life, the book might be too long." "Well," she said, "couldn't you just tell about some of your life?" I thought that over. The more I thought it over, the more I liked the idea. The book needn't be about all my life. I could write about the time I remembered best, the years when I was a boy, and maybe those were the most important years. So here is another book, a book about some of my life. Chapter 2. I was born on a farm near King City, Missouri, on January 9th, 1914. Besides my mother and father, I had two sisters and a brother. My sisters were Louise and Corinne. My brother was Glenn. Page 12. Corinne used to tell me, "The rest of us had good times together when we were growing up. You came along so late, you missed all the fun." I don't think I missed it all. She and my brother pulled me in a cart. That was fun. Neighbors came to our house, and my father played the fiddle while Louise or Corinne played the piano. That was fun too. The farmers worked all week and went to town on Saturday night. They went to buy things they needed. At the same time, they met their friends. I liked riding to King City in the carriage pulled by our two horses, Mike and Tony. I was 5 years old before I had a car. We had a car, the family had a car. My grandma and grandpa lived in town. We always stopped at their house. I could look out their kitchen door and see the trains come in. I didn't know until later that King City was a town. I thought it was a great city. On Saturday night, the main street was crowded with people. I had my first nickel bag of candy there and my first ice cream cone. I bit off the end of the cone and the ice cream ran down my shirt. I saw my first movie there, but I can't remember what it was. It was probably a cowboy picture. There were interesting things to see and do in town, but I was soon ready to go home. It seemed to me that was where I belonged. I liked our house with its little rooms, 2 upstairs and 3 down. My father told me it was almost 100 years old. In the backyard were trees, peach, cherry, pear, and black walnut. The vegetable garden was there too, and there were hollyhocks. Hundreds of them came up and bloomed every spring, with bees buzzing among them. A few steps from the back door was the well where we let down a wooden bucket and drew up water. It was good drinking water, fresh and clear and cold. Once the well rope broke. My father had to climb down to bring up the bucket. While he was down there, I became very thirsty. We drank from a tin dipper that hung in the kitchen. I took the dipper out to the well and waited. My father was a long time coming up. I looked to see what he was doing, and I dropped the dipper. It hit my father on the head. He was angry when he came up, and he scolded me. In the front yard were 4 mulberry trees, an evergreen, and a big box elder. I used to climb the mulberry trees, and I had a swing in the box elder. Our front porch faced west. I could sit there and see the barn lot with the big barn and small sheds. I could see the pasture and the woods. Beyond the woods, I could see Will Sutton's little brown house half a mile away. My dog, Carlo, would be with me on the porch. He was a collie. He was the family dog before I was born, but as soon as I was old enough to play outside, he became my dog. Page 16. Most of our storms came out of the west. I liked to sit on the porch and watch them. The sky would turn dark, almost black. Lightning would split the clouds and thunder would crash. Wind would blow and bend the trees, and I would see the rain like a gray curtain falling over the woods. It would sweep across the barn lot and onto the porch, onto my dog and me. Carlo was afraid of storms. He would shiver and push against me. I remember the smell of his wet fur. I would put my arms around him, and we would sit there until my mother opened the door and found us. "You'll be soaked," she would say, and drag me into the kitchen. But Carlo would have to stay outside. He was never a house dog. As I grew older, I played further and further from the house. I explored the barn lot, then the pasture, then the woods. The war came. Everyone talked about the fighting in France. I learned to sing war songs. Someone taught me to march. I marched like a soldier back and forth across the rug with the red roses on it. My sister Louise made candy and cookies and sent them to a soldier in France. I thought he was lucky having those good things to eat. She wrote him letters too. Later he came back and married her and took her away. That's the end of chapters 1 and 2. We'll do chapters 3 and 4 in the next video. I'll see you then.